I opened the door, and there was Lonnie, a completely different person. She said she was sorry for the way she had acted. So she said, you came from a long trip, and I made you feel so unwelcome. With tears flowing down her eyes, she told me that she had not gotten over Harry's death and how much she had depended on him. Here I was feeling sorry for myself when Lonnie was still mourning over Harry's death. Tears came to my eyes. We placed our arms around each other and wept. My writing schedule began early next morning. I was to put in 3 hours each morning, not more, not less. I could fix myself lunch at the cabin or at the Ramada. The Ramada, which had been the cafeteria for the hordes or aspiring writers who once lived in the colony. Now, there was no one else but me, or would be the last one. In the afternoons, I was to more parts of the colony grounds. I was free to do whatever I wanted in the evenings. I was warned never to get drunk in a colony. She had enough without the writers. If I did my drinking in Marshall, I was never to raise hell and give the townspeople the impression that Lonnie Handy is housing a bunch of out-of-towners, a bunch of drunkards. Whenever I finished a chapter, I would leave it under Lonnie's cabin door. Next morning, I would find it under my own cabin door with corrections and notes. She no longer wrote shit in my writings. She was still tough, but more tolerant, more forgiving. I was now in the writer's stage of learning characters, structure, and technique. She often quoted Walt Whitman, I do not pity the wounded person. I become the wounded person. She kept pounding in me that you, the writer, don't move the characters. It is the characters that move the story. So you have to become the wounded person and escape your little orbit and self-seeking self. Every now and then, we would sit at our cabin steps and talk about each other's lives. Lonnie Turner Handy was born and raised in Kentucky, then moved to Southern Illinois with her family. She met and married Harry Handy, who was an executive at the Ohio Oil Company in Robinson. James Jones came into their lives when the young man came home to Robinson after his discharge from the Army and wanted to write a novel. Lonnie saw much promise in him. She and Harry were willing to support him at their home and have him devote full time to his writing. 7 years later, the book From Here to Eternity was finally finished, and the rest is history. With proceeds from royalties of Eternity and its movie rights, Lonnie, Harry, and Jones started a writers' colony in Marshall to help other writers. The colony eventually had several writers who had their novels published. Yours will be next, she told me. One day, while mowing a portion of the yard, I noticed a lady at Lonnie's cabin steps, apparently Lonnie's close friend. The lady kept staring at me. Later, when Lonnie and I were alone, she told me that the lady had offered her a gun. What for? Lonnie asked the lady. He's a Jap, ain't he? She said. Lonnie laughed hilariously. I didn't think it was that funny. I was now compelled to tell her of an incident driving to Marshall. I was on the outskirts of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and stopped at a cafe for dinner. There was no one else in there but a lone customer at the counter. The young blonde waitress was talking to the customer and kept ignoring me. Finally, I said, Miss. The waitress kept giving me a scornful look and continued talking to the customer. After a second, Miss, she ignored me again, and I remembered when I was refused service for being a Jap or a Chinaman. I walked out. Lonnie laughed again. She said the waitress refused to serve you because she thought you were an Indian. So now I thought, I'm an Indian. After 2 weeks of writing continuously, Lonnie thought I should take a break, get out of Marshall, she said, go to Indianapolis, St. Louis, or Chicago for a couple of days, raise hell, get drunk, get laid. You'd be ready to start writing again. I went to Chicago to look up a boyhood friend of mine. I discovered that my friend was running a restaurant for a Chicago syndicate. I hung around the restaurant during the days. At nights, my friend took me around Ross Street at nightclubs run by the syndicate. a story in itself. Back to writing again, and after a couple of weeks, back to Chicago. This went on for the rest of the summer, and I was getting closer to the end of my novel. Lonnie told me that when James Jones was finishing his second novel, Some Came Running, which took place in southern Illinois, he became very impatient and wanted to move away from Marshall to be a part of the big city, New York, Chicago, Hollywood, which she scoffed at. It would destroy a writer, she said, all those celebrity hangers-on. Some Came Running was made into a movie. It was shot near the Wabash River. The leading actors, Frank Sinatra, Shirley MacLaine, and Dean Martin. Now, why would Jim want to hang around those people, said Lonnie. They're a bunch of actors, not writers. They knew nothing about what a writer goes through writing a novel. Jones moved to New York and tried to write out there, but the distraction was too much. He returned to Marshall, to his mansion, and his wife, Gloria, hoping to start writing again. Gloria, a big city girl, a writer herself, could not take the quiet, peaceful milieu of Marshall. Besides, she and Lonnie could not get along. She and Jones moved away after a few weeks, this time to Paris, France. Listening to Lonnie, I could not help feeling a tinge of anger and bitterness in her voice when talking about Jim and Gloria. Was there more than a teacher-writer relationship between Lonnie and Jim? It was, of course, none of my business. When Lonnie told me to forget about familiar eternity, that it was the past, that I should move forward, I thought, how could I ever forget eternity? It was my Bible, the novel that changed my life, the novel that emancipated me from a dull, mundane existence to a life of great expectations. My novel was finally finished at the end. We discussed the title and came up with Lucky Come Hawaii, a shortened Hawaiian version of We Were Lucky to Have Come to a Beautiful Place Like Hawaii. Lonnie wanted me to dedicate the book to my father and mother. I wanted to dedicate it to her. She became a second mother. She had changed my life. She had resuscitated me from a suicidal alcoholic to someone who now had a purpose and a hopeful life. Lonnie flipped a coin. Heads, my father and mother. Tail, Lonnie. It turned out tail. We sent the manuscript to our agent in California who handled most of Lonnie's writers. And then came the suspenseful days. Would the agent like the novel and be able to place it with a publisher? In the meantime, Lonnie started me on my second novel. Forget Lucky and start writing on your next novel. I'll work with you as I did with Lucky. Fall was now rapidly approaching. The leaves of the colony were beginning to turn brown and falling down. Lonnie went down to Florida, and I returned back to California, hoping to return to Marshall the following year. Lucky Come Hawaii was accepted by a publisher in New York. I tried not to celebrate and get drunk over it, but my friends threw me a party and not only celebrated, but stayed drunk for a couple of days. Lonnie sent me a telegram from Florida, congratulating me, encouraging me to keep working on my second novel, which I went back to once I got over my hangover. Early spring, Lonnie was now back in Marshall. I was hoping to join her soon. We corresponded and analyzed my next novel. In the last letter, she said, "We shall meet again in the garden." A few days later, I read in the Los Angeles Times that a famous teacher who had helped James Jones write his great novel, From Here to Eternity, had died. I was shocked for days, inconsolable. The newspaper article did not mention the cause of death. She was found dead in a cabin by a friend. I was lost, of course. I did not know who to call in Marshall. All I knew was that part of me had died with her. Lonnie, my mentor, my second mother, my wonderful friend. She was gone.